Hello, Capricorn North Nodes. Welcome back to another installment just for you where we talk about the Cancer South Node and how to heal the Cancer shadow. What does that mean? What does that look like? As you can see by the length of the video, we're going to get into it. So I do want to clarify right off the bat that this is really open to anybody who is wanting to heal the Cancer shadow. So let's say you had Chiron in Cancer or Saturn in Cancer, Pluto in Cancer. Maybe there's some of you guys still here. Yeah. Something painful going on in your Cancer energy, or even by extension, you could probably have some really heavy stuff going on in your fourth house and resonate with a lot of what we're going to talk about here as well. So this is open. It's really not just for Capricorn North Node, but for the sake of being able to have a conversation about two different archetypes, being the light side of Capricorn and the shadow side of Cancer, we're going to address Capricorn North Nodes as you guys, as far as who's watching this video, but it could be anybody. Break the rules. Come on, why don't you? Live a little. So super excited to get to be here with you guys. I already have out the version of this video for the Scorpio shadow, healing the Scorpio shadow, the Scorpio South Node. And it felt right for many reasons to come here next. One of the first ones was that Scorpio is a water sign, and I had thought about doing all three water signs because that was just kind of where my energy was at, was my own watery shadows, right? And the other piece was that I've said many times, if you've caught in different videos, where the two that resonate the most with me personally, other than my own, are the Taurus North Node and the Capricorn North Node. I resonate the most with the Scorpio shadow and the Cancer shadow as being my own. And I'm not in y'all's group, but I feel it. I feel it strong. And I'm a Taurus rising, so I have a Scorpio descendant, which is, again, another place to look for the shadow. So the Scorpio descendant being similar to the Scorpio South Node makes a lot of sense. I'm also a Capricorn midheaven. So my IC, the beginning of my fourth house, is anchored in Cancer. And that IC is also a dark part of your chart, a place to look for shadow. And so both of my shadowy anchor points are in the water shadows. And so for me personally, working with the Taurus North Node chapter, the Capricorn North Node chapter, those are kind of the closest to my heart as far as my own journey of becoming, and working with these energies of leaning towards those earth energies while you're made of water. You're not bound. You're not a constant shape like earth energy would want you to be. Taurus especially is a boulder. Capricorn's like a mountain, that's a big, heavy, solid, really slow changing thing. And water flows. It takes the shape of whatever surface, whatever container, it just is so changing. That's the nature of water energy. And so to balance these two can be such heavy work. Okay, so I just want to lay that down as far as everything that we're going to talk about around healing the Cancer shadow and the tendencies to leave behind as far as healing around your Cancer South Node, so that you can open up space to lean more into your Capricorn energy. I feel this contemplation personally. The other piece that feels really right about it is that there are two Capricorn North Nodes that are heavily influencing me right now in my life. And I would say one of them has, the words that came, which is okay. The words that came were she has like outsmarted the Cancer shadow. Like and what I mean by that is like she's harnessed it to her benefit, to where she has the superpowers and the boundaries that need to be on that Cancer South node. That like, we're going to talk about the tendencies that you need to leave behind. And I'm not going to leave you hanging on just like, you want to do this. We're going to talk about like, how do you actually do that? And like, what does that even mean to do that? And, you know, you are always going to be made of water with a water south node. You're made of water. And leaning for earth energy will always be foreign to you because you're made of water. But that's the whole point, is that that's what your soul is upon, is like you wanted to be made of water and you wanted to ground it into the physical. You wanted to take that water and wash the structures of the physical like a cleansing rain onto the status quo, the tradition, the way it's always been done. I like to think that our water south nodes, any of the earth north nodes, the Taurus North Node, Capricorn North Node, Virgo North Node, you guys are here to like reinvent a brand new tradition, a brand new status quo. Like, forget the old way. It's fucked. Like, it's fucked. And we are watching it crumble before our very eyes. And you guys, the earth north nodes, are the ones that know what we should replace it with. And you guys are here to build that, like with your own two hands, like your paws in the clay. That's what an earth north node is all about. And so Capricorn North Node, it's like, what are you building? What mountain are you climbing? What like distant perspective or horizon, or like I also like to think about Capricorn like a ladder, like as far as our ancestors and the traditions that we came from. Like, you think about your ancestors 200 years ago, like they climbed on their ladder to the height that they could reach before their life was over, and on their shoulders, like their kids got to like scurry up this part of the ladder, and then the kids like built this another rung that they climbed, and then now there's this one, and now there's this one, and so now they get to the end of their life and their kids get to get up to that part of the ladder, and then they keep climbing. And none of us are starting from square zero. Like, we all have the benefit of the traditions that brought us forward and the progress that was made before us. And I'm seeing in my mind that like progress is not always what you think it is. Like, progress maybe has like a really positive connotation in your mind. Like, it's light, shiny, fluffy, bright. Yeah, floating. No, not necessarily, because a lot of progress is born from some of the darkest moments that exist. And that's where Capricorn energy is like really about persevering through darkness. Like, taking hold of your values, taking hold of your vision, taking hold of your resources, and building the rungs of the ladder that you personally want to be able to climb onto. Like, if you want to be a leader or an entrepreneur, or like, just as an example, if that's what you want, then by definition, that's like, this is a perfect example, because by definition, it can't be given to you. You are going to have to, like, if you want to be at the top of that ladder, as far as like a leader in an entrepreneurship sense, that is literally saying, I want to stand at the top of a ladder I built by myself. And I use that example because that is very much my own personal goal, is to, like, I am an entrepreneur at heart. I start things. I give birth to new things. And I try at this point, knowing my energy as well as I do, I try to have other people around me to, like, I give birth to the thing and then I hand it to them and I'm like, good luck. And I walk away, like, give birth to the next thing, hand it to them, good luck, and walk away. And I just keep creating and keep bringing new life onto the planet, and then giving somebody. So like, I'm very clear on what it is that I want to create. And that lets me have a sense of like, what isn't that? And again, that's where we're going to look at these tendencies to leave behind for working with the Cancer shadow, working with the Cancer South Node archetype of like, you've been in this energy so long that you have the superpowers of like having mastered it, but you also have kind of like the stagnant energy, like a pond that, you know, has just been kind of sitting there with like no fresh water, like there's bugs and moss on the top, like gross, you know? So the South Node has kind of all of that going on within it by nature. And as we go through these tendencies to leave behind, do be making a note as far as like which of these feel like, yes, that is something that I'm currently working on. That is something that I already worked on a lot, and kind of like the person I was, well, okay, let me finish this thought. So like, yes, that is something that I need to work on. That is something I already worked on and made tremendous progress with, and could tell you stories about like how much that helped my life to change it like that. And which of them fall flat? Which of them like don't really feel like, you're like, wait, what? I don't know what that means. Like, me? Like, to do that? I don't get it, you know? Because that happens every once in a while as I work with these energies. And so if that's the case, I take it when it happens to me as that's something that's in my shadow. Interesting. Like the fact that I can't find it in myself means that it must be in my shadow, and means that it must be part of me that is still waiting to reveal itself to me. And that's a fun game. That's just like fun for another day. So as we go through the tendencies to leave behind, there are 9 of them. I'm going to read them out to start with, and let you have a moment, couple seconds with each one, and to make a note of like, how does it land? And then we will unpack. You can find the timestamps in the description to jump anywhere you want to jump in the video. So number 1 is dependence. So number 1 tendency to leave behind, to heal the Cancer shadow, to work with the Cancer South Node. Number 1, leave behind dependence. Number 2 is moodiness. Moodiness. Number 3 is insecurity leading to inaction. Insecurity leading to inaction. You don't act because you're insecure. Number 4, limiting self through fear. Limiting self through fear. Number 5 is using the past to avoid the present. Using the past to avoid the present. Number 6 is isolation. Spending too much time at home. Isolation, spending too much time at home. Number 7, lack of self-respect. Lack of self-respect. Number 8, avoidance of personal risk. Avoidance of personal risk. Number 9 is controlling others through emotional overreactions. Controlling others through emotional overreactions. So again, I would love to hear which of those are things that you feel like you're currently working on, which of those are things that you feel like you've already made a ton of progress on that front and that it's really helped to make you feel better, and which of those is kind of like, yeah, I don't really get that one. What do you think that one means? So I will now unpack each of them and spend a little bit of time giving my interpretations. Big footnote on all of that is that that's just my interpretation. I'm going to open up a window into my perspective and you can look through it. You do whatever resonates with your intuition and whatever feels right to you, as far as taking that in. And the last thing I want to say is that this is a special message, apparently, for those of you who are here still at this point, who haven't leapt ahead in the timestamps to find a different spot. But I mentioned there are 2 Capricorn North Nodes who are really influencing me right now. And one of them is like the Jedi Cancer South Node. She's like, she's also got probably like a solid 20 years on the other one. And so the fact that she is so talented with her Cancer South Node, maybe that's a factor of age. The other person is likely going to get, somewhere by the time they're 20 years from now. But the other person is very much an active demonstration of the Cancer shadow. And like the worst of what that water energy is capable of. And the thing is, Aries has the signification, the archetype of the warrior. They get the credit with being like ferocious and courageous and whatever else. And I think Cancer doesn't get enough credit for the fact that dude, in the cultures where they punish their people the worst, they give them to the women. Because when you combine emotional suffering into the mix, the level of persistence, perseverance, fight to the death, that is the capacity of a Cancer energy over and above the Aries energy. Aries may be the warrior, but Aries is built for a 2-minute cavalry charge, a spark of energy that is there to battle it out and then it's over. Cancer, on the other hand, could play the long game. They're in it for the 100-year war kind of thing of they don't forget, right? We're going to get into some of this. They don't forget, and when they have a grudge, they can hold on to it. And when when the Cancer South Node's emotions are clouding the field, the perspective is not grounded in reality. And that's part of that Cancer shadow of emotions are not facts. Emotions are guidance, absolutely. Emotions are information, absolutely. But they are not facts. And confusing the two is part of that Cancer South Node shadow that, again, very similar to what I mentioned yesterday, what I mentioned in the Healing the Scorpio Shadow video that I recorded yesterday, was that there is a Taurus North Node in my life that I wish I could say that hour and 15 minutes of everything that I said about healing the Scorpio shadow. I wish I could say it to this person. But the outlet, the capacity for that relationship, the bandwidth for that relationship to receive that energy from me, it's just not there. The infrastructure is not there for me to tell this person about how amazing they are through this lens of the Scorpio South Node shadow. That didn't make sense. Making the video and putting it on the channel, that made sense. And kind of the same thing in this particular situation. It's they are in the Cancer shadow, and my own Cancer energy, my own deep caring about my own suffering and the suffering of other people I want to help them feel better. I want to help them feel better to the point where I've even, like, in the history of this connection, allowed myself to get sucked in to what they had going on because I wanted so badly to help them feel better. And again, it's like, it's not about the other person. It's not about what they are doing, what they are choosing to do with their lives. And I think this is kind of like a common water shadow, like any of the water south nodes, the Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces shadows, is kind of like enmeshment, where you really honestly can't tell, and maybe there isn't even a defined border of like, where do I end and where do they begin? Like, you'll just dive in and like merge energies all up in with them, just like, you know, like, and then what is them and what is me? And I don't know. And so, like, part of I think one of the bonus items that I would add to the tendencies to leave behind, and again, if you're still listening, maybe this is more relevant to you, is over-identification with family or close chosen people. The family of origin, for sure, but even after that bond is broken, over-identification with the spouse, with having a role, like I'm a mother, I'm a father, having some kind of anchor point with other people, and the anchor to the other people is your identity. So, like, much like the air south nodes, especially the Libra south node, it's like you have somebody else in the core of your identity with that Cancer south node shadow. So, especially during this Aries North Node chapter, we are getting to have the core of our authentic self come online. If it wasn't already online, it's turning back on. If it has been online the whole time, it's like growing exponentially. Blow your mind how much it's growing as far as like materializing in the physical your new life that matches yourself, that you've grown into being. Like, yep, let's upgrade the authenticity of your life because you've upgraded internally the authenticity of your being and the authenticity between you and you. So this Aries North Node chapter has this, like, especially for the Earth North Nodes, I would think, like the ones of you who are kicking its ass, doing your work, turning inward, taking ownership of your energies, and really probably making a lot of progress already and for a long time on this front of the tendencies to leave behind. And that's where I would love to see some support in the comments as far as like, kind of where are you on that process? What have you been able to develop within your Cancer South Node areas? And maybe that gives, you know, somebody that's in this other bucket where they are actively struggling with these things and actively cannot see through it. Like, what would you say? What would you give them in terms of guidance? And I don't think the person that I'm thinking of is probably ever going to find this video or these comments, but somebody might. And so pay it forward as far as like, if you have healed any of these, what would you share with someone who might be currently struggling in a way that builds them up and gives them the safety and security within themselves to know that they can do it too. So thank you in advance for any support that you offer to anybody else who's trying to heal these Cancer shadows. So without further ado, let us, 2403, I'm writing timestamps as I go, baby, because like this is my video and I can do whatever I want. Okay, so number one of tendencies to leave behind for healing the Cancer shadow is dependence. And I would take this a step further as far as like, dependence can reflect, again, in the family of origin, like kind of a late bloomer, a slow to take responsibility for themselves. And if anything, a lot of the Capricorn North Nodes that I know were forced into taking responsibility for themselves, often through having children. They were like brought into the role of responsible one because they now had a child, like someone who was dependent on them. And that was how they got out of the role of dependent themselves. I would love to know, like, if that is anything similar to your experience. But so like when we talk about dependence, that's like a whole iceberg all by itself of like dependent on your parents, dependent on your siblings, dependent on your, spouse once you get older, your friends, your like, there's a lot of different ways that like when dependence is your posture, it's kind of like this subtle, often unconscious dependence on everyone around you. And I think the way that this often gets manifested, this is like the one step further that I would take it. Ow, I just punched myself. Maybe that's from one of you. You're not liking what I'm saying. It's cool, man. Like it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to hear this, and I get that. But I do think that, it depends on what your goal is, as far as if you want to listen to this or not. Because if you, want to, there's like a Cancer South Node thing of like coddling, of like, I just want to stay in the comfy nest and I don't want to go out there. I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. I don't want to not know what I'm doing. I don't want to set a goal that I might fail at. Like we're going to get into a lot of these other elements that have more to say about, like the fear of failure and those kinds of things. But when we are chronically dependent on others, there's like this underlying belief of like they should be taking care of me. And when they don't, it's like, why aren't they taking care of me? Like, I'm fucking pissed. Like, where's my support? And like just total baffled about like, why aren't you taking care of me? And so when we have this like this piece of dependence, it goes hand in hand with blame. And that blame is often what you're gonna smell in terms of like, where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's blame, there's dependence. Okay? Because again, if we are totally open and accepting of the other person in front of us, we have nothing to blame them for. They are what they are. Okay? And the only time that we will blame someone is if they're not doing what we expect them to do. And so we're allowed to have boundaries. We're allowed to have expectations in the conduct of people who are participating with us. Like we're allowed to take really good care of ourselves and to set whatever boundaries we need to make that happen. But if you've never communicated that to the person, if that's not even really realistic, like, my expectation is that you tell me every single reason for why you did what you did. That's my boundary. You have to tell me that. That's just an example of like, I don't think I do. I don't think I have to tell you that. I don't think that's reasonable to expect of me, I think, again, the blame that you may find yourself wanting to issue to others. It's their fault because they should have XYZ. They should be doing it differently in XYZ ways, like blaming them for not being who they need to be is one of the, I think, classic signatures as far as like that is dependence in action. It's like they don't have to be anything. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to listen to you. You could listen to you. You could do it the way you think it should be done. You could go build a legacy that looks just like that. It sounds like you have a really clear idea of how it should be. So you do that. You ground that. into the physical, you know, like not somebody else who has their own wants and desires and heart-centered what's important to them. And they get to ground that into the physical. And so the Cancer shadow of wanting to kind of like be in that held place and have other people, what I would call feather your nest, you know, like you only give me exactly what I want from you. Otherwise, like, look out. And again, it's like, don't get lost in what this picture is painting, because there are superpowers in the Cancer South Node that, like, what I would say the light side of this, like there's duality in all things. There's a light and a shadow. If anything, I think you overestimate the capacity of other people. You are like one of the best cheerleaders and supporters of other people that there is. Like the way that you are able to really experience and see what somebody is and what they are capable of. Like it's basically like you can see potential that like the other person may not even be able to see that in themselves. So that is a gift, and that is coming out of this place of dependence and blame. Like you have almost like an inflated view of other people, but you can channel that to them for a profit for yourself. I mean, you can use that in your skills, in your business, in your tools. Like, you know, what are you using to build this legacy that's important to you? Your ability to read people, your ability to see them, to feel them, and to have a depth of information about them, whether they like it or not, because you're getting it from their aura. You're just like psychically downloading so much of the person's heart. And then your ability to reflect that back to them is truly a gift. But the thing about it is like the balance in this is healing that Cancer shadow has a lot to do with you depending on yourself. And that only happens when you heal your perspective of yourself and you see that just like how awesome you think everybody else is, you also have just as many gifts, just as many talents, just as much ability to pick up the thing, look it over, pull it apart, see how it works, put it back together, and like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, you have just as much intelligence as every single other person that you would want to depend on and then blame when they don't come through for you. You can do it. You can do it. And the fact that you can see potential in other people means that that potential already lives inside of you. So, like taking ownership of depending on yourself in terms of like the practicality of how do you actually do that, it's like you have to trust yourself. You have to know that you're capable. You have to see your own capacity for real. Like not the selling yourself short version where everybody else is awesome and you suck and know nothing. Like that's not going to cut it. And if anything, when you're in that spot, like that is the painful part of the shadow. That's what's going on, is everybody else is awesome and I suck. And it's never true, but that's kind of what I mean by when your emotions are so stirred up that it's debilitating. You can't really actually even see reality because you're so in your emotions. And in this case, everybody else is awesome and I suck. And the pain of that, the pain of thinking that you suck, like now the pain is all over your eyes and you cannot even see when life is giving you opportunities to shine in all of your magnificence because you are so dead set on I suck. So that, again, like I feel that within myself, within my own journey. I feel that within one of the ones that's influencing me right now. And I want to say that we are always right where we need to be, and that the pain of not knowing, not being able to see our real selves, of being able to see our real capacity, that pain is absolutely part of how are you even going to know on the Capricorn North Node side? How are you going to know what you need to do, what you need to build, what mountain you need to climb, what far off distant horizon, what stacked up ladder rungs are you here to climb on top of? Like, how are you going to know until you go through the experience of your own personal suffering and finding your way out, and the things that helped you to make that transition from dependence to independence. Independence, being dependent inside of yourself. Like, the things that helped you to make that transition are the things that you are here in that Capricorn North Node sense to build into the world. That's part of, Pluto going through Capricorn, Pluto going through the sign of your North Node. It's like it's been in giant chunks, like through history. It's been cleaning things out of the way. Old status quo, gross, nasty, crumbling apart thing that has a shitty foundation and it's full of toxic mold. Get it out of the way, blow it up, debris, skid loaders, clear it out of the way, clear it out of the way, clear it out of the way. And the path, the blank slate of what Capricorn North Nodes are getting to, like, not only are you in a position for, okay, so what do you want to build? What is important to you? What is cool to you? What do you personally care deeply about that you think is worth your limited time and energy on this planet? To bring it more into the physical so that more people can feel more loved and more safe and more held by the universe in this world. Like, what will you do? What will you do with your life to make that a reality? And the pain that you went through is the source of what you're here to build. So no matter how much of the pain is left, no matter how much of the Cancer shadow still lurks in your energy field, every ounce of that pain is to be grounded into the physical, is to be planted so that it can grow into the new tradition, the new way of being on this planet. You becoming independent is essentially humanity becoming independent. Like, you guys figuring out how to do it will lay a groundwork that other people will get to climb the ladder that you built and then build on top of it. They'll get further faster because of you and the work that you choose to engage in. So your journey of becoming independent, like, I would even go so far as to say independence is your industry. Okay, like, what is your industry? What are you an expert at? You're an expert in how to be an independent individual because you've had to build it from the ground up. Not another single soul group, nodal group, knows in such conscious step-by-step detail the process of becoming independent as a Capricorn North Node, because you guys are literally starting with nothing. You are starting at like square zero, total dependence. And then brick by brick by brick, little nudge of confidence, little nudge of confidence, little nudge of confidence over decades built you an independent self. And again, other people are going to climb on that ladder that you laid out how to do this. So your dependence is not ugly by any means. The fact that you blame people sometimes, like when you want to point a finger, you want to project blame onto somebody else, like that is, again, like giving them credit that belongs to you in a way where you're overinflating their capacity and underinflating your capacity in the process. So really, blame is one of those beautiful smells that you can learn to recognize that says, ooh, a bit of my power is around here for me to reclaim. And I can smell it. I can smell it. Where is it? What is it? How can I be more responsible for this in this moment? And so it can become like a Easter egg hunt where you can literally like smell your power like lurking and like ready to be reclaimed. So that is my opinion on dependence and blame. Like, dude, there's light and shadow in all things, and you can play that game. You know, like I wake up playing the blame game, and that is my doorway into greater self-empowerment. Thank you very much. So, dude, make it work for you. It's totally possible. All right, number 2. Wow, we spent a long time on number 1, but that's cool. It felt really good. Number 2 is moodiness. And this is really what I was alluding to back in the intro. And if you skip that part, no worries. We're going to talk all about it here. But like, that's what I was alluding to when I talked about, you are made of water. Okay. So Capricorn North Node, you could be the most advanced Capricorn North Node on the planet. You're still made of water. You're made of water. So leaving behind moodiness, I'm going to go ahead and give Jan Spiller the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to fill in this iceberg as far as what I think it means. And I'm going to say leaving behind moodiness for Cancer South Node is impossible. Okay? I don't think that's possible to no longer be moody. But there is a piece that she used on the Scorpio South Node section where it said inappropriate intensity. And I want to take that inappropriate word and I want to put it here as far as number 2, retitling it to inappropriate moodiness, because there is an appropriate way to be moody. And basically it boils down to self-care. Like, I think Cancer South Nodes, that Cancer shadow is like, it is just exceptionally high maintenance when it comes to the emotional needs of the individual. And this is where I'm speaking from personal experience as a Cancer IC. I am a needy person. I have intense needs, and they are many. Like, I am high maintenance. It takes a lot to ride the waves of the ocean inside of me. Like, it's an intense ride. It's a roller coaster. Moody as fuck, okay? And that's why I say, like, I don't think you're getting out of that. I don't think you're gonna just leave that behind. I think it's a trick of like appropriately managing your moodiness, or letting the moodiness spill onto, most likely with the Cancer South Node, the people closest to you. Like the ones who love you the most, the ones who want the most to like hold safety for you, that most likely that is where the moodiness would spill first. And it's only when it's big enough would it spill onto someone who was outside of that like immediate little circle. That's where like the Cancer shadow is part of, like the person who everybody in the neighborhood thinks is amazing, and then behind closed doors, like beats his wife kind of thing. Like, wait, what? Like, that ability to only be abusive to those close up to you is part of that Cancer shadow. And then to everybody else, you're like Mother Teresa. And it's a front. It's part of the Cancer shadow. It's part of like idealizing who you see yourself to be and not grounding that in reality. So moodiness and allowing yourself to be moody in appropriate ways is really about managing it yourself. So, before you have somebody else help to manage your emotions, you take a stab at it and you sit with your emotions, you journal through your feelings, you try to, do a reality check on your feelings and which of these emotions is guidance, like I should be setting a stronger boundary, I should be, looking to make a change in my life altogether because this person clearly doesn't respect me. Like, negative emotions, painful emotions, like those are guidance. You're not going to want to just like, oh, I'm not moody anymore, like I'm totally steady. Like, no, you need that shit. Like, you need to know when you feel bad, but like, what are you doing with it? And are you channeling it into guidance to let you know, like stronger boundaries or walk away altogether or whatever it is? Or are you attacking that person? You shouldn't treat me like that, you lowlife, you piece of shit. Like calling names, blaming them for being not right, and on and on and on. Like when you're taking your emotions and you're throwing them at other people, that is likely the moodiness that we're trying to leave behind. We're trying to not impulsively just have like a hurricane brought down on the head of the person standing in front of us. The hurricane may be a thing, but you can take the hurricane to the gym. You can take the hurricane to your journal. You can take the hurricane to your therapist. You can take the hurricane to a lot of healthy outlets, and you can deal with that shit on your own using the support that you construct for yourself, where you're making an equal energetic exchange. Either you're paying for the support, you're equally offering support between the two. Like, there are healthy ways where you can support yourself in your moodiness, and it doesn't have to be anybody else's problem. It can be a deep well of inspiration and wisdom and guidance for you personally to navigate by, but you don't have to weaponize it at another person. So that's number 2. Number 3 is insecurity leading to inaction. And this is, this is where that whole, like, you guys had to build your independence piece by piece by piece. You started with a blank canvas where you were 100% dependent on caregivers. And that lasted as long as it lasted. You know, like some Cancer South Nodes, they live to 80 years old, and they are dependent on caregivers the whole time. Like, the shadowiest shadow of this is chronic illness, that they will actually make themselves sick so that caregivers, you have to be taken care of. You can't take care of yourself. And so, like, the deepest, darkest Cancer shadow is to live the life of an invalid, live the life of someone who cannot care for themselves, who must be taken care of, is chronically on welfare, chronically being taken care of, catered to by a significant other or even a parent late in life. That dependence does not go away without some significant shifts. And one of the pieces that is really super important here is that I think it cannot be overemphasized as far as, like, when you have a Cancer South Node, those first caregivers that you, I believe, chose to be born to, the parents that you came here to have, they liked it that you were dependent on them. Like, typically, the Capricorn North Nodes that I know of, they have patterning in their parents, like they really enjoyed taking care of you. They wanted to be a caregiver, like, for the rest of your life. Like, the most extreme example of this, and I'm going to put just a little content warning here, as far as, like, if you're familiar with Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her snapping and ordering the execution, the murder of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. Gypsy Rose, the daughter, is a Capricorn North Node. She's a Cancer South Node. And basically, in the aftermath of this, when the truth all came out, it was discovered that Dee Dee, the mom, had been abusing Gypsy Rose through, like, Munchausen by proxy. That, like, she was intentionally making her sick and then taking her to the doctor, where the doctors would, like, dote on Dee Dee for being such an angel, such a devoted caregiver, and, like, wow, like, you're just such a saint, Dee Dee, I don't know how you do it, and, like, all of this, and Dee Dee is making Gypsy Rose sick. And Dee Dee also, the other thing that she did was she, like, basically hid Gypsy Rose's birth certificate and had her believing she was 16, even when she was, like, 23, 24 years old. Like, literally just, like, didn't give her her rights because the mother liked it like that. The mother wanted to be the lifelong caregiver. And even the people who, let's say it wasn't such an extreme case, and, you know, you did break away from your family of origin, but then you get into another relationship where, again, that pattern is playing out. It's like the person in the caregiver role needs to be needed. They have the Cancer shadow too. That's why they're in this with you, is like, no, they benefit from you being dependent. They love it, actually. And at every turn, they will erode your self-confidence so that you do not believe that you could be independent. And a perfect example of this is the child, the Cancer South Node child saying like I forget what profession it was, but it was something where you'd have to go to college, like a 4-year college degree or whatever. And the child was like, oh, that's such a cool job. Like, I think I would like to do that job. And like, wow, that's so cool. And the mom of the Cancer South Node child says, oh, honey, but that requires a lot of school. That was all she said. That was all she needed to say, because the implication was already there. The parents were already doing the child's homework because the child wasn't good at school. And I'm like, how the fuck are you ever going to figure out if the child's good at school if you're the one doing the homework? Like, the coddling, the over-supporting that set you up on the Cancer shadow path that the Cancer South Node is on, it's like it was born out of the Cancer shadow of like your parent didn't want you to be independent because they weren't independent. They were dependent on you, right? Like they were dependent on their role as mother or father or caregiver or whatever it was. Like there is a perpetuation of the Cancer shadow breeds more Cancer shadow. And that's always the way it is, right? Like just like the light side of Cancer breeds more of the light side of Cancer. So in this case, insecurity leading to inaction, it's like when you really dive into your Cancer South Node journey, you are going to come face to face with how did your initial caregivers set you up for failure? And I get mad because it's just... and I come to peace with it all in the span of 30 seconds. Like, it's what you chose. It's what you needed. It's the beginning that you needed. It was the level of sheltering that you needed early on. And you needed people who were that devoted to taking care of you. That's what you needed. And that's okay. That's okay. That's where your soul was. Like, that's the rawness. Like I think of like a crab without a shell. Like that's the crab coming in the Cancer South Node, like, but with no shell. And so the parents, the initial caregivers, were the shell. And they wanted it like that, and you wanted it like that, and that's where you started. And that those patterns set you up for failure as far as like chipping away at your self-confidence and your self-esteem. Like, oh, but that requires schooling. You know, implying right there on this, I mean, like the person explained to me that like the effect of that was very deflating, was extremely deflating as far as like being reminded like, oh yeah, and I'm too stupid to do school, so I can't do that. That was the conclusion. And I mean, like no surprise, the person like barely finishes high school and absolutely has no desire to pursue higher education. Not necessarily because they have no desire, but because they can't. I mean, they can't do school. So, I mean, this insecurity isn't an accident. It's not something that is a mystery, okay? Like if you resonate with that, when the insecurity leading to inaction, like, yeah, like I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in myself. I need the structure of somebody else providing that main, you know, scaffolding in my world. I need somebody else to bring that part because I can't do it. Like that leaves that Cancer South Node archetype in a lot of situations, putting up with a lot of things that are what I would call mistreatment or things that you don't deserve simply because you don't believe that you can do it any differently. And so that insecurity leading to inaction, again, it's like, how do you actually take action then? It becomes a matter, like, and that's what the Capricorn North Node is a lot about, taking action, taking a lot of action over like years and years and decades and decades and decades and decades. Saturn of like brick by brick, day by day, hour by hour with your two hands, taking action for years to get somewhere important. And insecurity leading to inaction, like that will be a festering wound of the more stagnant you become, the more painful life will be. So not moving forward is not really an option. Like it will become so painful that like either I'm not going to be here or I'm going to figure out how to move forward. It's kind of the turning point that is the boost of courage that that Cancer South Node needs to cross over into just go after what you want. You know, like none of us are guaranteed security. The world is an insecure place. None of us make it out of here alive. None of us make it out of here without some sort of disappointment, failure, setback. You didn't get it the first time, so you had to do it again the second time. Like, I mean, that's just life. That's just the 3D. That's just the forces of this environment, the pressure cooker that the 3D is. It's school. It's Earth school. And no matter what anybody told you when you were little, you rock at school. You are like a sponge. And your ability to absorb from your environment is nearly second to none. I would say there are, you know, maybe top 3 most receptive creatures on this planet. Cancer South Node, right up there. Maybe even the top one of those top 3. Let's go to number 4. Number 4, limiting self through fear. And really, I would say see number 3 for an in-depth discussion where we talked about insecurity leading to inaction. Limiting self through fear is, again, very, very similar to that. And the fears that you have are not there by accident. So what needs to happen is the fears that you have that hold you back, every single one of them, go within your own emotions or with a therapist, trusted, confidant, friend, whatever, equal energetic exchange environment where you feel safe to explore down into the roots of each of the fears that hold you back. And look at the roots and do not be alarmed if you see the people that you love most saying really mean things to you. Okay? Because when someone that we love, when someone, like if our heart is open, then we've essentially given them keys to the kingdom, and their influence will imprint from the inside out onto our psyche. Our heart is open, that's the access that they have. And loving someone, I mean, the verb of loving them is to open your heart to them. And that's why, like let's say your mom in early life telling you something about yourself, which when you take a step away from the situation as a whole, like totally detach from it, go air energy on its ass and just observe like what even happened here. Your mom gave you her opinion about you, but like I was explaining with your heart open and the imprinting and all of that, like when you love that person, and especially before the age of 7, before you've even begun to develop any sense of self, anything that that person said to you became automatically true in your psyche. There was no barrier of defense. There was only an open heart and a totally impressionable psyche. So 100% of what your primary caregivers, the ones that you loved in your early life, 100% of what they told you, ages 0 through 7, you believed it to be true, and most likely in many cases still believe it to be true. Unless you have specifically worked it out, root by root by root, and untangled fear by fear by fear, then you still believe the falsehoods, the opinions that those caregivers told you about yourself. You took them as fact, and you're still running with them unless you've uninstalled them one by one by one. And so that takes a lifetime, and it can really push you to find the superpowers available in that Cancer South Node, as far as like, you have the ability to love anything, including anger and mistreatment. Like, I would say, like, forgiving to a fault is kind of like in this energy of when you see that it's like your most loved one that is the root of your pain. Working through that, I mean, there's no way around that being challenging, triggering, painful territory, okay? And so do make sure that you are getting the support, that you have built the infrastructure of support, therapist, close friends, like people that you can talk to and feel safe with as you explore this territory. The main takeaway here, though, is that it is possible to uninstall every single one of those fears, because all it was one person's opinion. And the functionality of an open heart and a young psyche, combined with someone who personally benefited from the gratification of you needing them, it's a perfect storm for they manipulated you into underestimating yourself. And when you think about it, especially when you put your child in that situation, and like somebody doing that to them, does it make you mad? It should. Anger would be a healthy response here. And that would be more in like the light side of the Cancer South Node, as far as like harnessing the superpowers. The light side and harnessing the superpowers of that Cancer energy would be to get mad, to get pissed, and to, again, take those emotions and ground them into the physical, to bake them into the Capricorn North Node soul mission that your heart is upon. So that is possible, you know, like, I shouldn't have been treated this way, therefore that is inspiring me and what I want to build and contribute onto the planet, so that as many people as can be spared from being treated that way as possible. Like, it's not going to change what happened to me, but if I can personally exert my influence and change what happens to other people, prevent them from the pain and suffering of what I went through, then that will be a life well spent, and I will be proud of my legacy at the end of it, no matter how long I get to stay on this planet and continue to work on it. So limiting yourself through fear, it becomes, again, a game of every time you feel held back, and the only reason is because you're afraid of something, go into the root. Where did that fear come from? Whose opinion was that? Because it's not yours. And you don't have to own those fears. You can return to sender that shit, give it back to the person who sent it to you, give it back to where it came from, and you move on unlimited, right, into the Capricorn North Node legacy that you are here to build, right? The projected limitations from other people, those were their limitations. They didn't have the same soul mission that you do. Maybe they weren't supposed to do the things that you're supposed to do. Like, they're giving you their limitations. That's all it was. Those fears that they gave you, those were their fears. That's all it was. And so you need to let them own that. And you need to let the chips fall where they may, as far as like recognizing if there are still toxic caregivers who are benefiting and angling for your dependence. You need stronger boundaries with them. They need to spend less time in your life, and those kinds of tendencies to leave behind are absolutely going to unleash with a force of nature, that Capricorn North Node. So number 5 is using the past to avoid the present. And I think, for this one also, I'm going to say see number 3 and number 4, because the past and, well, it was like this last time, like that's basically just one way. That's like a subset under the umbrella of limiting ourselves through fear. So you can check out that conversation for more on that. Number 6 is isolation and spending too much time at home. Again, I think that one is pretty common for all the water south nodes, like tend to be pretty homebody-ish, and going out into the physical world and participating in the physical world is often one of the core challenging themes of the life of, like, it's like every time I go out into the world and do the thing, like I'm usually fine, but then over the course of time, like I'll gravitate back into my home such that now I'm like in that situation all over again, where I'm like facing the anxiety all over again about having to go out into the world. So like it's like one of those loops that can come up time and time again. Very similar to number 7, which is lack of self-respect. And for that one, I am also going to refer you back to number 3, insecurity leading to inaction, specifically the part towards the end where we talk about those insecurities that you have about yourself and the things, the limited idea that you have of yourself, the very warped perception of the limited capacity that you possess that leads you to have a lack of self-respect. Like that shit isn't by accident. There was a toxic caregiver who programmed you to believe some really, really hurtful things about yourself that are kind of like the opposite of true. That like, if anything, the things that they told you were your biggest weaknesses are actually your greatest superpowers. Noodle on that for just a second, because that's worth pausing the video and just letting it come up as far as like, what are the things that those early caregivers gave you a hard time about? And can you go with me and make the leap that those are actually your greatest superpowers? I would love to know. Tell me in the comments. Number 8 is avoidance of personal risk. Avoidance of personal risk. And I think that this also, again, when we really start to look at this whole list, like, yeah, there's 9 things, but the Cancer South Node is the Cancer South Node is the Cancer South Node. Like, it's just one shadow. So like, these are all just ways of like peering into the same building, essentially windows on the same building. So avoidance of personal risk, I think, goes back to the insecurity, the fear, it didn't work out in the past, so it's not going to work out this time. Like avoidance of personal risk, like you don't believe that you can land on your own 2 feet. That's the nature of dependence. That's the nature of the toxic caregiver benefiting from the idea that you took away, that like, I better play it safe. I better, well, mother knows best, or, whatever. Like I need not rock the boat because mother said that this is what I should be doing. So that's what I'll just do that. And like staying in the coddled place, avoidance of personal risk. And the thing about the Aries South Node is like, the thing about the Aries North Node, the chapter that the collective is currently living through, is like, I would say if you are in a darker part of the Cancer South Node shadow where you are living in a more dependent place, you are avoiding personal risk, you are blaming others because they're not what they should be. Meanwhile, you're sitting there insecure, avoiding your personal risks, like for you to just go after what it is that you want. Like if that's more where you are, I would imagine this Aries North Node chapter is going to essentially blow up those situations. Like you don't get to stay there. You don't get to just keep going with the South Node pattern. Like your higher self doesn't want that for you. Your higher self pointed you at the Capricorn North Node for a reason. So whatever it has to do to like break apart what is holding you back, I think, you know, when we avoid risk, we play it safe, and we end up staying in these stagnant situations where like it's just not giving us life. It's like you can do that, but like the risk that's growing is that the universe is going to solve it for you. Okay. And you might not like how they do that, because most likely they're going to rip it away from you like the safety blanket that it is. And they're going to force you to land on your feet. You know, it's like have you seen like a nest of baby birds where mama bird is like there, and you know the baby bird's just like looking so like, oh, tentative, can't, want to but can't, and then mama bird just like and knocks the baby out of the nest, and the baby's gonna hit the floor or fly. And most of the time the mama's instincts, the Capricorn North Node is a lot about, you know, what, like you guys experience toxic caregivers. That's like a Cancer South Node shadow. So what does a light-filled caregiver look like? And balancing it with the Capricorn energy, it's like that is the mama bird on the side of the nest saying like, I know you're not confident enough yet to jump on your own. That's why I'm gonna push you. And because I push you, because I believe that you can do it. I believe in your capacity. I can see the potential in your capacity, even though you can't see it yourself. In me pushing you and you having to fly, now you have access to your capacity too. Now you have more self-respect. Now you have more self-confidence. Now you have more independence available to you because of that. There's like a parade of trucks going by outside. I'm sorry if you can hear that. It's like distracting. But I feel like it's like cheering and applause of like this whole concept of like, what is a good caregiver and what does that mean and what should it look like and how and when should you push somebody out of the nest and how and when should you put your wing around them and really console them and comfort them, but when should you push them? Because if you let them stay in their comfort zone, they would live and die in their comfort zone, you know, and you know they can do it. They just won't believe that for themselves. And so you give them a little push and now they know it for themselves. Woohoo, you know? I see that as like really the most beautiful side of that Capricorn North Node is like, you know that you sometimes need a push. You sometimes need somebody else to come along and tell you that actually, I think you would be great at that. And if there's anything I can help as far as like help, you know, fill in some of the details or what to expect or whatever, like let me know, but I think you would be really great at that. So there are people who have showed up in your life, no doubt, to give you those pushes to help you move more into an independent place of being. And that like essentially, you know, it didn't feel like a risk at that point because there's this other person who like believes in you. And I think that that is a common thing too, as far as the Cancer South Node shadow kind of growing out of the shadow pattern and into like the Capricorn North Node light pattern, is letting yourself be supported. You guys are, again, one of the best ones at receiving support. You take it to a debilitating extreme, but you're really good at it. And other people have a lot to support you with along the way. Like that's something that of a superpower, that you're really good at being supported and you're really good at supporting other people. So knowing how when you need a little shove and how that translates into you giving a little shove to other people, and soothing the personal risk by knowing that you're not in it alone. There is somebody who believes in you, who's right here next to you, who is gonna be there if you fall down, even if you do fall down, which you probably won't because you most likely can do this because you can fly. So we're just gonna give you a little push out of the nest. Number 9 is controlling others through emotional overreactions. And again, I will direct you back to number 2 and the conversation on moodiness for more on this, but ultimately I think emotional overreactions aren't the problem. Even controlling others not the problem, right? Like, we have to put those two things together to get the tendency to leave behind. Controlling others through emotional overreactions. So here's what I mean by that is, number one, emotional overreactions. You're made of water. You're going to be sensitive. You're going to be moody. You're going to have big feelings. You're going to have intensity inside you. It's going to be an ocean sometimes. You got to ride the waves. The hurricane moves across the surface of the ocean. Like, the waters get choppy. Like, all of that is just who you are. Cancer South Node, like, that's not going to change. So, like, emotional overreactions, like, I don't expect that those will go away, but they are not for the purpose of controlling other people. Your emotions are guidance for you. Your emotions are guidance for you to navigate on your path. That's all. And on the flip side, controlling others, not a problem. Not a problem. If anything, that Capricorn North Node is a leader. The Capricorn North Node is a starter, is someone who sees potential in something that doesn't even really exist yet and works with their own time and energy to pull the value out of the ethers into the physical. Like, it's incredible what you are capable of. And imagine if you were controlling others through wanting to pull the value up out of them, like controlling others through helping them to maximize their deepest potential in life on this planet, like controlling others through being a cooperative component to their unmanifested potential, the potential that they do possess, but only in the non-physical, only in the ethers, and you can see it and they can feel it, and together you help their potential come into the physical. Like, maybe that's not controlling them per se, what you would normally think of, but you have an influential role to play on other people. Other people will be served by you having an influence on them. You should be influencing people. You should be doing that. Not through emotional overreactions and moodiness, but through believing in their capacity even when they don't. Capricorn North Node, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation around healing the Cancer shadow. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. I would love to hear down below which pieces were in those three categories, like which pieces are the ones you're working on now, which pieces are the ones you've already had the most success working on, and which pieces kind of fell flat. Like, I don't really recognize that yet. I would love to hear from you down below. I would love for you to read each other's comments and support each other as you share this journey of working with this Cancer shadow. It has been my pleasure to hang out in this space with you. And until next time, I do hope that you will take such good care of your beautiful self. And so will I.